What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the weekly update. Yes, it's been quite the journey. We've had some big earnings over the past week. Big tech has delivered their numbers, come out with some absolutely mind-blowing numbers, but guidance has been bad. Chip shortage is a thing. Not only that, but there is also some more bearish sentiments that have been going on over the past week and a half, past 2 weeks. There's been stuff coming up. I've talked about it. The different variants is becoming more of a thing. Mandating vaccines is becoming more of a thing. You also have China, which is, there's been some talks back and forth, jabs from both the US and China. So you do have a lot of things in play. Things are running extremely high. And we have Jackson Hole at the end of the month. Being said, earnings is not over. Earnings for this week. We do have some earnings. Like I said, a lot of the bigger earnings have already passed. A lot of big tech anyway, but that doesn't mean earnings are completely gone. This week you do have BABA, which I don't know if I've mentioned previously, but the stuff going on with China, you have to be mindful, you have to be cautious that Chinese stocks can get delisted. So I would be very mindful of that and be very wary. Again, this isn't financial advice, but I'd probably stay away from those until that whole situation gets figured out and you actually start to see a recovery. Don't try to grab a bottom because the bottom may not be in yet. Being said, this week we have Skills, we have Roku, we have Uber, Etsy, Fastly, Moderna, we have Square, we have DraftKings. We still have a lot of earnings to go. We have Win, Yeti. There's just a list of essentially mid caps, some of the other smaller stocks that have earnings this week. But we've seen the guidance and we've seen what it's done. This is something I've been talking about over last week, is the fact that this is something that we have seen. Now, this is something we've seen back in March. Now, saying that, we did get the same kind of effect where Amazon completely crushed earnings, and then they turned around and guidance was bad and they sunk. And we saw that on Thursday evening. Amazon crushed earnings. Yes, it's not making top dollar. It's still generating a massive amount of money, but that doesn't matter. They did deplete some of their cash, but being said, it tanked Amazon, and Amazon did not recover on Friday. So going forward, I'm not going to really have a big set of watch lists. Things are at the top, and we're starting to see big tech come down. Big tech is essentially what's been running the most over the past 2 months. A lot of the mid-tier and small caps have really been kind of suffering through this whole thing, and now it's possibly, we might even see a small rotation, but ultimately I think things are going to pull back even more from this point. Again, there is a lot at stake here. There's a lot of different, again, bearish sentiments that are going on. I'm not saying the market's going to crash, but we do need a pullback. We need a decent pullback. Again, the variant stuff could get a little out of hand, especially the kind of mandates that come out. It's also something to keep in mind. It also could be a wild card. You have to kind of play out these different scenarios and kind of wonder what could possibly happen. It has to be back in your mindset. This is why we manage risk. So being said, I'm not going to have a watch list. I'm going to simply state that what we need to be doing is watching essentially FANG stocks and seeing where they go. That is what's been driving the market. We want to see what happens with them in this coming week. Even with earnings, I'm not really playing anything with earnings. I was looking at Square, but being said, PayPal got crushed last week. I don't know exactly what news came out, but they, I believe there was some Bitcoin news or something that came out and absolutely obliterated PayPal. So seeing that, I'm not really too fond of Square this week. Roku could be a possibility. A lot of these, I'm not playing the run-ups, especially with what's going on in the market. What I want to see is the after effect, right? If they do crush it at earnings, if they do start running the next day, continuations is what I'm looking at. Aside from that, I am following essentially big tech from that point. So being said, the market in general, again, we've been trading flat, right? We've been playing this range. I really thought after this move that we were going to open up Friday and it could be a possibly bloody Friday, and it really would have pulled back. It didn't do that. It actually held and pulled up. You had your Tesla. Tesla had a big breakaway on Friday. That was the biggest player. Tesla had a nice little pop on Friday, but again, rejected at that 700 mark. This has been a pain for quite a few weeks to this point. At 700 has just been something we haven't been able to break. Once we do break that, that's something you should set an alert at, because if it does break that, it will run. It's been held down. It's been consolidating for a very long time. And so being said, I think, again, with the chip shortage, we might just play range. I don't think we're going to see Tesla at 1,000 in the next month or two. I think we're going to see a little bit more of a pullback. I think you might see it play this 500 to 700 range, around this 545 to 700 range for a minute before. I think in the fall, I think we can finally break out of this. Maybe we get some news on chip shortages. Maybe we get some momentum. Ultimately, yes, there is a lot of money in the markets, but you have to understand the market's just not going to go up. It's not going to continue to go up. It's tired. It's been running extremely hot. And so we will get a correction. How much? Again, there's still a lot of money, unless one of these wild cards that I talked about in the beginning of this video happen. If this variant gets anything crazy, we start talking about lockdown, you're going to see a bigger pullback at that point. But I don't think it's going to be any kind of crash. I don't think there's any crash coming soon. We are aware of it last year in March. The whole talk about the virus was something completely new. This isn't new now. Now there's variants, so I'm not expecting some massive crash like last March, and a lot of people may be thinking that, but it's not going to happen unless you see the scenario in which mandating vaccines starts getting carried away. You start seeing some riots. You might start to see a bigger pullback at that point. But even if we do correct, I don't really see more than the 8% correction. I know even in March, it was just the 8%. I think it was barely an 8% correction in the general market. So being said, and we did have one pretty hefty pullback just last week, I think it was. But we are starting to look like we're starting to turn over. It really depends on what goes on this week. We do have, again, we have the Jackson Hole at the end of the month. That's the biggest thing, the biggest meeting we're kind of concerned about. We do have, they're talking about the infrastructure bill over the weekend. You're going to have a lot of Biden over this week. The data doesn't seem to be affecting the market anymore. Powell's been standing his ground. So I don't really, unless there's some dramatic numbers that come out with the data, I think we can kind of push the data stuff aside, unless it gets so much to where Powell comes on and says he will taper, which would differ from what he's been saying over the past couple of months. So being said, QQQ, it looks like it's building into a wedge, to be honest. We could get a nice breakout and continuation. It was end of month last week. So we want to see how Monday reacts. We open up, we gap up, do we go flat, do we gap down? We want to really see how the week plays out. So my daily videos will probably be more informative, because we want to really see how the beginning of August opens up and then play it from that point. Yes, we are right in the middle of earnings, but that did not stop it last March. We're kind of seeing the same pattern play out. So that's why I'm bringing that to your attention to see where we go from here. So Your Teslas, definitely want to keep it on stock. Keep it on watch because of the fact that it looks like everything's been pulled essentially out of Amazon into Tesla. You also want to keep on something like Google, see if Google holds. Google's been kind of flat. Does Google finally start selling? Once Google finally starts selling off, I think you're really going to start seeing a bigger pullback in the markets. Apple was actually starting to run. I had some news on Friday. It was starting to run again, so that's a good sign, a good possible positive sign in the markets. If you can get Tesla and Apple running, at least Google standing still, I think we would be okay. Then you have Amazon. Amazon, I'm not too sure about. Is it going to continue? It didn't even bounce on Friday. Maybe we get a bounce on Monday, which will be, I think, a pretty impressive bounce if it does bounce on Monday. But otherwise, I think we will see some kind of bounce on this before we actually sell off more, do any kind of further pulling back. Facebook tried to make a comeback on Friday too. It had a strong open, but then kind of went flat towards the end of the day. Roku, again, this week has earnings on Wednesday. I think it's one of the bigger players this week. Again, it's sold off pretty hefty on Friday. Just be mindful. A lot of these might just go sideways until more information about the variant comes out. We've been in a lot of holding patterns lately because there's a lot of uncertainty. People don't know what's going to happen. And we get something that is not really happened in our lifetime, right? So no one's really known what's going to happen, right? This is all new. We don't have any historical reference in the market as to how this is going to play out. So just be mindful of that. I know I like to give chart analysis and all that stuff, but just be mindful that, and the charts won't matter once that variant news comes out. Once that fear hits, if something starts locking down, you don't know how the market's going to react. So, being said, I think Airbnb might be a possibility. They got earnings coming up. It's actually showing strength. And one thing to keep in mind, if the variant stuff does start getting a little carried away, I would probably look at ZM. Could be a possibility. It did run on the last time we had some craziness. It had a nice pop on Thursday. Might actually be building up, to be honest. This looks like it wants to building a little wedge here for another possible push up. So you got ZM, you got TDOC, which is another one you probably want to watch if anything does happen with variant stuff and lockdowns start becoming more of a thing, or more talks of lockdown start becoming a thing. You'll probably start seeing these things start to really move again. So just be mindful of that. I've been thinking about biotechs as well. I'm not a fan of playing biotechs. Banks, even possibly, but not a huge fan of banks or biotechs. But ultimately, this video is getting pretty long, so I want to kind of cut it there. But just, again, ultimately understand, follow your leaders in growth. Money will go there first. If you see money start to trickle out from there, start looking for some of your news-driven events. Again, lockdowns. Look at TDOC. Start looking at ZM, possibly even Moderna. It could be one of them too. That's running pretty high and pretty hot, so I'd definitely be careful, because if there is talks of lockdowns, Moderna might run, but then as soon as they may call it off and say, no, we're just kidding, Moderna might sink pretty fast. So just be mindful of that. Money is definitely floating around very quickly and being shifted very fast, depending on the news that is coming out. So as long as you're staying with the FANGs, I think right now are good indicators, in my opinion. That's why I really haven't played a lot of mid caps lately. I do like Roblox is another one I've actually taken a position in, and I think that one might be able to do good if stuff starts to get a little haywire. You got Beyond Meat this week too. They have earnings. Something good might come out of there. The food industry, you got Chipotle has been running. So that's something to keep a mind on and keep an eye out for too. Again, something else that could completely flip very fast. If something is strong in the market and FANG starts running, those will be the first to start losing. Any kind of things like Chipotle or anything like that could quickly drop fast because of that. So if you've made it this far, remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Till next time, I'll see you guys later.